Another draft physics, draft science here on YouTube. Video presentation. So things have gotten a little wacky at Quora. So I don't know exactly what the resolution will be. What will happen. So I did sign up with my name, and then obviously when I'm going to actually display the content, I'm not going to dox myself. So I changed my name to DraftScience. Um, and they don't allow you to do that, Quora. So apparently somebody narked on me. Now I'm sure a lot of these people have fake names because really people in the grown-up world have to know it's really dangerous to say anything controversial on the internet under your own name. I mean, frankly, if you're not rich enough to buy security and all that crap, I mean, I got a security camera, I got stuff. But, you really, people are so crazy now. They tried to storm the United States Senate and kill senators. I mean, they're that crazy now. So, I mean, this whole idea that some place expects me to publish under my real name, why the fuck would I do that if I don't have to? I mean, why the hell would anybody rational use their real name to publish, when it's so easy to use the internet to find out where somebody lives and do all this crap? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And the fact that the internet is so slow to figure out that this is a real threat. I mean, how many people are going to have to get killed? I mean, I guess that's what we're going to argue, right? How many times will it happen? Like that singer in Florida and other things. Somebody's just going to show up and kill them because people know where to go to get them and to attack. And this is a real thing. It's not a fake thing. This is a real threat. And everybody's just pretending, no, it's not a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. I mean, the trolls on this account alone are, they're so aggressive. I mean, their whole life is revolving around going through all my videos and the transcripts, so they can quote mine sentences out of them. I mean, they spend hours and hours and hours, on this horse shit, on this attempt to sabotage me in some way, or to sabotage again. They keep using references to my family and anybody who's connected to me. So they're trying to use these other people to attack me. They're trying to scare them. It's a real terrorism. It's not some sort of, oh, it doesn't. No, this is real. Okay, and it's really stupid that the world is letting this shit happen. That these people aren't automatically people who have these tendencies. These are the people the FBI should be watching, okay, are people who spend their life doing this kind of horse shit. All your little VPN people, all you people pretending you're doing it for your own security when you're doing it to gain anonymity from any accountability. Yeah, you don't want to be watched because what you're doing is malicious and stupid. And you don't want anybody to know you're a malicious, stupid idiot. Well, so Quora has suspended my ability to interact because I changed the name on my account for a damn good reason, damn logical reasons. So we'll see what happens. I appealed. We'll see what they fix it. So if they don't, if you have an account at Quora and you don't mind using your real name, we can actually use your account to create a business account, and I will give you authorization to use my DraftScience name, and maybe we can change it that way, or I'll just publish under your name if you want to give me the access to your account, because I'm not going to sit there and make a fake account with a fake name. I mean, that's just what is that, how everybody's supposed to behave? We all just create this, pretend it's real when it's fake. What the fuck is that? So Quora is basically saying, learn how to be a liar and join us. No, I won't do that. So fuck you. It's just too stupid, really. Too stupid. I could see them having my real name on the account, and then let me publish under a screen name. But why the fuck should I have to publish under my real name? It's just overtly dangerous to do that in America. It's overtly dangerous. If you're going to say anything controversial, if you might piss somebody off, there's no way a rational person does it. If they have the choice to be anonymous or use their real name, there's no fucking way you use your real name. Anyway. So it's disappointing because I did ask a new question that I think is really good question. So yeah, we'll go to some of that and see if we find some answers. So this was the notice. Your account status has changed. Your account has been temporarily blocked for editing for not following the name policy and formatting guidelines. I'm sure whoever got my account blocked is using a fake name. I mean, that's the joke of all of this. So anyway, as fair retribution to the troll, it's no doubt Farley who's behind this. He's got a bunch of sock accounts on my account. So anybody who posts with a account that's less than, say, a few weeks old, you're automatically blocked. Okay, so just don't bother commenting. If you can't use an account that's more than a week or two old, fuck you. All right, you're blocked. Okay, so that's going to be the policy. So this is just bullshit. You'll sit there and you'll sit there and be in cahoots with people who are sabotaging my ability to do anything on the internet. And you're not just benign shitheads. You're clearly a pain in the ass. You're clearly time consuming. I shouldn't have to waste my life correcting your lies all over the internet. And frankly, if this ever does come to a lawsuit, Farley, okay, I'm definitely asking for monetary damages. I'm going to ask for a great deal of money per hour for the time I've had to spend cleaning up the mess you make. To just understand, it's not just going to be, I'm going to certainly ask for punitive damages because you're malicious. So just understand you're stepping into something. You're also the proximate cause, just in case something did happen. Say if you've incited some lunatic and they actually do something, you can be liable. You can be a proximate cause. You can be sued under federal law, okay, for a violation of the law. I don't need a prosecutor to do it. I can do it. And if I'm dead, somebody can do it for me. So just understand, you can step so far, and you're clearly pushing it, okay? So when you bring up all these other people and start attacking them and using them, that's extortion, shithead. That's another crime you're committing. Extortion. So anyway, just the internet. It's just so fucking broken. I wish there was some. I wish this was like some. Wow, it's amazing. This is so stupid. But no, everything is broken, and this is just another example of just everything broken. The broken world these trolls have created for us. Alright, so I guess here's the question. So we'll reload it just in case there's any new funnies. So I can't comment. I just can't do anything. So it's a very good question. Okay, if I'm in space and I throw a 2-liter bottle of Coke away from me at 1 mile an hour, do I receive the same amount of thrust if I shoot a dime away from me at 1,000 miles per hour? So this is, the troll was inquiring because I've already used the bowling ball example, right? I hand you a bowling ball, it's the same amount of energy as a bullet, actually. The joules of energy is the same. Catching the bullet or catching the bowling ball, same thing. All right, you're just doing it a different way, and that's the only difference. The joules are the same. And so this just illustrates that even more clearly, that it actually is the same if you're in a spaceship and you're shooting things off your ship, and you shoot 2 liters of mass, 2 kilograms, you push that off your ship at 1 mile an hour, it's the same energy, same 2 joules of energy it takes to shoot a dime at 1,000 miles an hour. Same energy. You'll go this way the same amount. So if I did the Coke bottle this way and the dime that way, I keep going straight. So it's the same energy. But the paradox is, they say the dime has 2,000 joules of energy. The Coke bottle only has 2 joules of energy. It goes off 2 joules, 2 joules. The dime has 2,000 joules of energy. Now how can that make any sense? How could I create 2,000 joules that way and only 2 joules that way, and yet I'm still going straight? The opposite, equal and opposite reaction didn't happen. Newton's third law is just completely blown up, right? I mean, there's no way the universe is working right, because somehow I didn't do 2,000 joules to shoot that dime. There's no 2,000 joules in the opposite direction. So clearly it just blows up this phantom energy. You know. So the answers have been silly and stupid so far. I mean, just really, really, really stupid. So I did edit the theorem into the word, into formula, you know, just because that threw somebody off, which is just hilarious. All right, so this Emile Boe says, you receive the same amount of thrust, so he's conceding the argument, okay? I get the same 2 joules of movement from both of them. That's all I get out of it. The two joules of opposite reaction. I get the same 2 joules. That's all I get. But yet somehow that dime has 2,000 joules of energy. It's in space now doing 2,000 joules of energy. How could that make any sense at all? Oh, that's right. It can't make any sense. But this is something else than how much energy is expended. So again, they think momentum is nothing. Like they don't even understand it as a concept, because they've completely disconnected it from energy, when clearly Newton would have called it energy. Clearly. It's exactly what he understood made everything move around the universe, was momentum. So it was energy. It wasn't some other kind of thing. So it's like they just keep pretending, okay, I'll just pretend momentum doesn't mean anything. Of course it means something. What are you talking about? It doesn't mean anything. Okay, in the Coke bottle example, you expend a modest amount of energy. So he just said it's equal. Right? But somehow, wait a minute, I expended more energy with the bottle? So well, anyway, you expend a modest amount of energy that results in a small gain in kinetic energy for you. So I gained kinetic energy. So now he thinks the kinetic energy is the reaction. So if that was true, if the kinetic, if the equal and opposite reaction was the kinetic energy, right? The bottle only has 2 joules, so I only get 2 joules. The dime has 2,000 joules of energy, so I should get 2,000 joules of thrust. And it's like they can't follow along. They just refuse to stay on the subject. All right, wait. Results in a small gain of kinetic energy for you, and a modest gain of kinetic energy for the Coke. Well, you kept saying that, or you already said the Coke twice now. So now explain. So he just explained the Coke, and he didn't talk about the dime. And then he says the sum of both is equal to the amount of energy spent to throw the bottle of Coke away. The sum of both? Wait. So now it takes 4 joules of energy to throw something 2 joules? No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry. It's not the sum. Wrong again. All right, with the dime, you need a really large amount of energy to accelerate to that speed. So the fact is that no. Okay, momentum says it's 2 joules. It takes 2 joules of energy to make the dime go that speed, because the dime is so low in its mass. It just takes 2 joules of energy. They just happen to be in the form of a lot of speed and a very little bit of mass. But that's how much energy it takes. It takes the same energy to do both things. So let's change the thought experiment and say we have the same amount of energy. It's a charge of dynamite. And the charge of dynamite makes the soda go 1 mile an hour away. So it sends the 2 kilograms off at 1 mile an hour. So just like a bullet, a gun, I could put a rod inside the gun and have it connected to a bowling ball, and yeah, the bowling ball doesn't go very fast. Yeah, same charge, but not the same result. But it is the same result in the fact that it's the same amount of energy. So let's use the same amount of energy. So I'll change the question again to say I use the same energy to send a Coke bottle away, 2 kilograms, and I use the same energy to send the dime away at 1,000 miles per hour. And it's the same energy. So if we understand that, then we understand the recoil is exactly equal for both. Even though one of them, you silly people say, has 2,000 joules of energy. All right. with the dime, you need a really large amount of energy to accelerate to that speed. So that's the part that fools people. No, you don't. It's a very small amount of energy, actually. You probably need something like a gun. Yeah, guns don't have more energy. What they do is concentrate the energy. Yeah, okay, which would push you back. Yes, exactly the same force goes one way as goes back the other way. The gun has the same energy. Even though the gun doesn't blow your head off, even the gun doesn't fly backwards and go, knock your eyes out. The gun has the same amount of energy. Okay, what gives you the same small amount of kinetic energy? So that gives you the same small amount of kinetic energy. So we know it's not a small amount. So how does that make any sense? I get a small amount of kinetic energy going this way and 2,000 joules going that way. I get 2 joules this way, 2,000 that way. So explain how that's consistent with Newton's laws, because obviously it isn't. But now the dime has a really large amount of kinetic energy. And where did it get it from? I only used 2 joules to produce it. I'm only going to get 2 joules going this way. How did the 2,000 joules end up going that way? Only 2 joules going this way. How did 2,000 go that way? Obviously he's not going to explain. But note that this measurement of kinetic energy is something different than the momentum you both gain. So again, no, the real secret is it's all momentum. And the soda bottle has 2 joules. The dime has 2 joules. I get the 2 joules from both. That's all there ever was. Momentum is all there ever is. All of this fake energy is just that fake. Okay. All right, so John Klowowski, boat builder. So another very difficult proof against kinetic energy theorem. In what way? So he doesn't even get the argument. The obvious way, that it's 2,000 joules. Well, anyway, explain. In all situations, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Yes, that's the whole point. How come I'm only going to get 2 joules in opposite reaction, and yet there's 2,000 joules going the other way? How's that possible? If we throw a Coke bottle here on Earth, well, obviously it's not even close to being comparable, is it? So we already did it, so we didn't have to worry about thinking about Earth. It's in space, okay? No atmosphere, no bullshit to worry about. We don't notice the reaction. Well, I think you still would, but regardless. But floating in space, we would see ourselves moving slowly in the opposite direction. We would move based on our mass. So we would move even slower, okay, than the 2-liter bottle. 2-liter bottle is going 1 mile an hour. If you weigh, 1,000 kilograms, you're going to be ending up going, 1/100th of that speed. Because you're 100 times heavier than 50 times. So you'll end up going 2% of that speed because of your mass. Okay, shooting something 1/1000th of the mass at 1,000 times the velocity would produce the same reaction. So there we have it. He's conceding the argument. You get the same reaction, but somehow the action, which you sent into space, is 2 joules and 2,000 joules. How could you get the same reaction when you sent 2,000 joules into space? Something that's going to be doing 2,000 joules worth of work. Well, the fact is, that's the part that's just such a fraud, because the whole formula is fake, and all of those joules are fake. The dime doesn't have 2,000 joules of energy. It can't make 2,000 joules of heat. It'll make exactly the same amount of heat as the bottle. And so that's the dig here. This is just so fucking unscientific. Excuse my French. How does this negate the concept of kinetic energy? So I did have the opportunity to reply to this before I got silenced. Oh, but they're not going to show it, so you can't see my reply. Well, here it is. The dime has 1,000 times more kinetic energy. That is 1,000 times more joules of energy, 1,000 times more watts of energy. I only used 2 joules of energy to throw the Coke. You tell me, how many joules of energy did I use to throw the dime that was 2,000 joules of energy? kinetic energy, joules of energy. Oh, yeah, we have more here. Well over 2,000, so this is where it doesn't make any sense. Well over 2,000. So he thinks I used well over 2,000 joules of energy to make the dime go that speed, when the fact is that no, you use 2 joules. It only takes 2 joules of energy to do it. Just a fact. You also moved. Your arm is not an efficient throwing machine, so I did say shoot, so I point that out to him. Okay. When the dime was released, your hand, which is much more massive than the dime, was traveling at the same velocity as the dime, right? Obviously, it can't do that. I can't move my hand that fast, so I obviously can't throw a dime that speed, and that's the whole point. Things that it's hard to go fast in the universe. Going fast is difficult. Going slow is easy. You know, so the fast things fool us, because everything's sort of made to interact in a slow level, not at a fast level. Our biology is made to protect us against slow-moving things, not fast-moving things. But there aren't too many fast-moving things that hit us. If you are floating in space, then your change in momentum will match the change in momentum of the dime. So the dime's energy. So we're not talking about momentum. So now we see they just want to keep separating things. Yeah, the dime's momentum is only 2 joules. But we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about how much kinetic energy it has. The kinetic energy is 2,000 joules. That's the one you have to explain. There is no similar relationship for energy. So that's their escape hatch. We'll just pretend there doesn't need to be an equal and opposite reaction. When you create kinetic energy, they're basically saying there doesn't need to be any equal and opposite reaction. So I can create 2,000 joules of energy without any equal and opposite reaction. So they really are anti-Newton all the way down. This is obviously not Newton's math. It's not Newton's formula. They've lied about it and said it is when it isn't, clearly. And then they're breaking one of Newton's fundamental laws, that you can't make energy in one direction without accepting energy in the other direction. I mean, this is so clear. So I said shoot the dime. So then he says, if you're floating in space and you change your momentum, it will match your change in momentum of the dime. Will it match the 2 joules I used to shoot it, or the 2,000 joules the formula says I created? So will my equal and opposite reaction be the 2,000 joules I created, that you say exist in space now, or will it be the 2 joules that momentum says is all I used? That all the dime has is 2 joules. Is it 2 or is it 2,000? You have to decide. You can't have it both ways. There is no similar relationship for energy. What is momentum if not energy? A description of energy. Newton certainly thought it was energy. So even though they didn't have the word energy, Newton certainly thought of it as energy, and that's why he predicted all the stuff he predicted, is because he understood it as energy. All right, so this Chris Richardson butthole. Anyway, so he says, you would need to explain what you believe to be a kinetic energy theorem. It's not a term used in physics. Well, it frankly is, and you could Google it and you'll find results that are certainly part of it or related to it. So there's a work energy theorem that's based on the kinetic energy formula, you know. So this is just such silly semantics. So I said, I've seen plenty of places where the work energy theorem is called the kinetic energy theorem, but I'll change the text in the question to the kinetic energy formula. Obviously, there was no confusion, and no idiot would not understand what the subject was. But anyway, we have clarified. So then he says, nowhere populated by anyone trained in physics. I think the first result you'll get on Google is to Khan Academy. Yeah, I think they're trained. But anyway, is this you? It is highly entertaining. I mean, yeah, obviously it's me. The video has the Quora page right in it. Durr. So you're a physicist and you couldn't figure out it was me? I mean, the Quora page is being displayed in the icon of the video. The Quora page, where my question is actually right here. The question I asked is right here. And you're confused? You're not sure it's me? Yeah, okay. So that just shows how honest these people are, right? It's all a little game playing, la 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 la, you know. Very lame, I would say, to that crap. Alright, so anyway, so I think this is a great question. Unfortunately, it's not going to go anywhere because I can't respond to anything. So that's disappointing. Let's just see if they've updated the notification. No. So, yeah. It's just such bullshit. So, I guess I could just go over the text some more. So there was some interesting crap from the trolls in the comments section that's worth talking about. Because it gets to why there's a difference between me merely dropping a 2-liter bottle from a centimeter high, a half inch, and I drop the bottle on you, and that's about 1 mile an hour. So you have 4 kilograms dropping 1 mile an hour. And then you have the dime, and you think about it hitting you. Now, obviously the cap on a 2-liter bottle, everybody knows that cap is bigger than a dime. A lot bigger, actually. I mean, if you took the surface area, it's probably twice as much surface area. So to do it right, you actually do have to make that cap smaller. Okay, or you have to imagine the dime much bigger. You know, twice as much volume of surface, twice as thin. So anyway, but there's just a fact that yes, the two of them will hit the skin differently because of the velocity, that velocity matters. So that's the part I'll get to. I have already previously sort of given you a good evidence of an indication of the explanation for why there's a difference. So when I explain how the pins leave at the maximum velocity, so the 8-pound ball, let's say going twice as fast. Let's say it's going 16 miles an hour, and the 16-pound ball is going 8. By going 16 miles an hour, it means the 8-pound ball loses a lot more energy a lot quicker. Because when it hits a pin, it gives it the 14 or whatever miles per hour. It gives it a lot more energy. So when it hits a pin, it gives it 14 miles an hour. So the pin has a lot more joules of energy because it's going 14 miles an hour instead of the 7 it would go if the 16-pound ball hit. If the 16-pound ball hit it going 8 miles an hour, the pin would only leave at 7 miles an hour. But because you hit it with the 8-pound ball, the pin leaves at a much higher rate and with a lot more joules of energy. So the ball loses energy really fast in comparison to the 16-pound ball. And that's sort of the trick, why the heavy bottle, even though you're hitting the same surface on the skin, the difference is the slow-moving object can only give its energy in much smaller amounts. So it has to give it to a lot more elements because it can only give it in smaller doses, in smaller clumps. It can't give the atoms and molecules. When the dime hits, it's hitting at 1,000 miles an hour. That means it can give the first things it hits 1,000 miles an hour velocity. Something like 950. So I'll explain. I'll draw that again just to explain it, and it makes. But it's like the real science, right? I mean, you sort of can understand in a vague sense. Yeah, I get it. 2 joules created it. It can only be 2 joules of energy. I can't make 2 joules turn into 2,000 joules. That's ludicrous. That's free energy. It's nonsensical. So it's wrong. But the reason to understand why it's wrong is to understand why there's a difference between a fast bullet going through you and a slow 2-liter bottle going through you. They're just not capable of going through you the same way, because the energy can't be dissipated at the same rate. I mean, it's really not that hard to understand. Okay, but anyway, I'll take a break and get to that. Yeah, I'm back. So I'll read what I wrote in response to the troll. Okay, who just kept trying to say, because it doesn't look right, to say that the dime and the 2-liter bottle have the same energy, that it can't be right. Okay, so it's because they really don't want to understand it scientifically. So I composed this argument to explain it scientifically. Okay, speed changes the rate at which energy can be transferred. I mean, this is just a huge thing to understand. I didn't understand it 4 days ago, but I understand it now. I understood it a little 4 days ago, but I really didn't get how this is everything to physics right here. Speed changes the rate at which energy can be transferred. You can't have a complete transfer. You can't make energy go into something if the energy is being transferred slower than the reflection time. So I did point this out in previous videos, maybe a couple weeks ago, that if something's moving and there's going to be a reflection of the energy, if it's moving really fast, it misses all the reflections, right? Because the reflections take time. The energy has to go this way and then come back again. And if the thing is gone, it can't reflect into it. And that's what's slowing down the slow object, is the slow object has to deal with the reflections. The fast objects don't. So it's a huge advantage to speed. Alright, that's just a fact. Sorry you don't like facts. In the first few milliseconds of a dime hitting your flesh, so there's a dime going 1,000 miles an hour at a high velocity, most of the energy is transferred to the other objects because the dime gave them its high velocity. So this really simple argument, let's do this now and we'll read some more. So I already gave this as a pin example, but so if you have something moving fast, okay, what it's going to do, okay, and it has, but it's light. It's fast, but it has very low mass. So it's low mass, you know, and high velocity. I guess we'll just use up and down arrows, right? Low mass and high velocity. So when it goes in, it starts hitting things, little atoms or any little stuff it's going to hit. When it encounters something, if it's going 1,000, the fact is it can give almost that 1,000 to this other object. So you'll give it, say, 950. And that means this one's also slowing down. So this one's gone down to 949. So when this one's going 949 miles an hour this way, because it's starting to give away its energy, it's losing joules, and it can only lose the joules by losing velocity. It doesn't lose mass. So it loses some velocity. And as soon as its velocity is lower than the object it's pushing, so it's pushing this object gets up to 950, and this one drops to 949, then this object leaves. It's no longer in contact. It can't possibly gain any more energy because it's left. Okay, it's gone. It's not in contact anymore. And it's leaving at 950, okay, which is very fast. And if its mass was, say, 1/10 of this, well, that means this lost 1/10 of its energy. You know, and this would be down to 900, actually. So we'd have to assume, we could assume by these numbers, that this mass was actually 1/20th, okay, of this one's mass. And then that number works. So if I hit something 1/20th of its mass, that'll work. Now a bowling ball is hitting bowling pins which weigh like 3-4 pounds. So the pins are substantial in terms of their mass. So if you give a pin the mass of the ball, say the mass of the ball is 16 miles an hour, and I give the pin 15 miles an hour, well that's 15 times the mass of 4, which ends up being something like almost 50 joules. So I'm losing a lot of energy to that interaction. Well, anyways, so obviously the next interaction it can only give the 949 left would be the maximum. Can't give the maximum, so you'll end up giving something like 900, and then you know, that's all it can give. So this one will go off at 900 this time. You know, the second one it hits, and now its speed here is now down to just 900 miles an hour. And then, you know, depending on what it hits, it will. So you can understand it's the dime doesn't have a lot of mass. So as it's losing its joules to these objects, it's going to run out of mass, the carrying thing, quickly, and it's going to run out of energy because it's giving big hunks of its joules of energy to each object it hits. It gives a big amount because it's giving them big velocities. Big velocities means big joules. So it's losing its energy quickly. Now the big slow object, right, the big giant thing going slow, it has the same problem here in the sense that it can only push something as fast as it's going. So if it's only going 1 mile an hour, it can just make this go 1 mile an hour. That's all. So each interaction it has, it only loses a tiny percentage, one 1,000th in this case of the joules per interaction. It's using a lot less joules per interaction. So it's a tiny amount of its total mass, energy, it's losing per interaction. So it has to have 100 or 500 interactions to lose the same amount of energy this one lost in just 6 or 7 interactions. So this one dissipates all its energy in just 6 or 7 interactions, where this one has to go through 1,000 interactions to dissipate the same energy. Let's say 500 anyway, or 400 even, 300. A lot more interactions to dissipate all of its energy. So the problem is the slow thing, by the time it's doing that, it's hitting all these things. Well, all these things are ending up pushing into other things that are in the environment, and those other things are reflecting. Some of those other things have momentum in the opposite direction, and they're going to reflect the energy back. And so now these objects are going to hit this object and exchange their energy. They're going to give it energy in the opposite direction. They're going to, do this kind of thing. So they're going to deter its progress with the reflected energy, where this object doesn't have to worry about the reflections because these things are shooting off so fast that energy isn't going to come back for a long time. It's going to take a while for something to push that energy back. So it's going to be a long time before there's any reflection that this object's going to see. It's going to be way over here by the time any energy reflects back this way, where this object won't be able to get very far before it's getting hit by a ton of reflections. So it's just not going to progress as well. And it might even bounce. So the fact is, if you drop the 2-liter bottle on your chest, cap first, fact is, it might even bounce off your chest because it's not going to be able to push its energy in because it's going to get clogged. It's going to try to push the energy in, and the energy is going to be pushed back by the rest of the atoms and molecules are going to push back. They're all going to push back. They're all going to push back, and the pushback is going to hit the object before it's gone. It's not going to be over here out of the pushback. It's going to be here, and it's going to have to accept the pushback. So it's not going to progress as well. It's going to be meeting more energy. So it's just about the fact that our tissues have a bias for speed. And it's just a fact. Our tissues say, yes, if you're going fast, we'll give you almost a free ride. It'll be really easy to get through. If you're going slow, it's really hard to get through. So like clay, our tissue isn't a very good way to measure energy. But the fact is, the same energy. The 1,000 mile an hour dime has the same energy as the 4 kilograms of water or Coke or whatever. Same energy. 2 kilograms. Yet 2 kilograms, 4 pounds, 5 pounds. Something like that. So it's really, it's a very important insight, in my opinion. I mean, mark it down. Important insight happened today, because that explains a lot. All right, so see where I left off. Well, let's just say it again. Speed changes the rate at which energy can be transferred. Okay, that's just a fact, so you don't like it. It's in the first few milliseconds of time hitting your flesh at a high velocity, most of the energy is transferred to other objects and transferred in the same form of very high velocity. You give very high velocity to the little particles. It's the reason why a gun works. See, I mean, a gun would be nice if you just used a spring. You could just compress a spring and then put a bullet in. But you can't, because we can't make a spring that can release fast enough. There's no spring fast enough to push a bullet to 300 meters per second. We can't make a spring that decompresses that quickly. So that's why we can't use a spring. And the same problem with air pressure. If I try to use air pressure, pump up a gun, the pressure needed to move that fast, to move air that fast, is insanely high. And so then you have to worry about blowing the gun up. So, you can't use pressure. So you really have to use dynamite just because that explosion is so quick. That explosion is a spring moving, 100 times faster than a spring. The explosion can move 100 times faster than the spring. So the explosion, has the capacity to push a bullet very fast because the explosion's moving very fast. If we could make a spring that could go as fast as a bullet, then we could just use springs in guns. Be very nice. You just pump it a few times, you know, but you can't do it. I mean, you can do it with a BB gun, but you can't really do it with a good, a bigger size projectile, because the air pressure has to be way too high to be fast enough to push it at that speed. All right. I mean, explosively high pressure. We just can't make a pump, is the point. You can't make a pump that can withstand the amount of pressure. Now, they probably could make one. I'm just saying you couldn't make one economically practical. The government probably has guns that can use pressure, but, anyway. At high velocity, most of the energy transferred to the other object because the dyne will give them high velocity. So it's just an understanding. The high velocity object gets rid of its energy very, very fast. The slow object has to take a long time to get rid of the energy, and the longer it takes, the more it's sitting in the energy pool, the more likely it is it's going to be pushed back. The more likely it's going to meet with reflections. See, in a gun, the bullet leaves so fast that even if energy was to reflect off the back of the gun and move forward again, it's already way behind the bullet. The bullet's already gone. You just can't hit it with the reflected energy. That's why it doesn't matter whether you have a spring against a wall or not. The object moves away from the wall so fast that any reflected energy can't get to it. All right. The big slow bottle can only give slow velocities to the thing that it hits, so it takes a lot longer for the energy to transfer. The big bottle will affect more smaller bits, but it will affect each bit with less energy. And so it's just a laborious process for it to push the energy into the object, where the dime gets the energy in quickly and in one direction. Okay, our bodies are designed to protect us from low velocity impacts, so it doesn't do well against stuff at high velocity. So the bottom line is the only reason why these experiments look funny is because we're not built to defend ourselves against high velocity. If we had, an exoskeleton, then the bullet would look silly because it wouldn't be able to crush it. And then the heavy bottle would be able to. Yeah, it would be the inverse kind of circumstance. You can make a substance that has the opposite bias. As I pointed out, the cornstarch has an opposite bias. If we were made of cornstarch, the bullet wouldn't do well, but the slow bottle would go right through us. All right, speed is harder to produce. Okay, so let's understand speed it's very difficult to take heat or energy and then funnel it and make it go faster and faster. So getting a lot of fast things to be going fast, it's hard to make things that go fast. So that's why you usually have to have explosions or something, but you can only do it based on nuclear chemistry. The chemistry of the atoms is the only time you can get this really high velocity. So the high velocity, you need to push an object with high velocity. You usually have to get that from some sort of chemical reaction. You can't get it by throwing. You can't throw something 1,000 miles an hour. You physically can't do it, because you can't move your thrower that fast. You can't move the catapult fast enough to make the thing go that speed. All right. You can't make a catapult that shoots a bullet, right? You put a bullet on a catapult, you could catch it with your hand. It just isn't going to work. I throw the cow at you, though. Go ahead and try to catch that. Anyway. If you were in a... Okay, no, that's going ahead of ourselves here. Okay, the big slow bottle can only give slow velocities. There we go. Okay, but each affects with less energy. Okay, our bodies are designed to protect us from low velocity impacts, so it doesn't do well against stuff at high velocity. So we're like clay. We're a shitty test instrument. Okay, speed is harder to produce, but it doesn't make more energy. So that's the key point. The bullet and the bowling ball have the same energy. It's the same number of joules. It's the same ability to move matter. The same momentum. And that's all there is. There is no other form of energy besides momentum. Newton was 100% correct and Leibniz was a religious kook. Okay, a fanatic, more fanatic than Newton. Okay, Newton was a religious kook, but he clearly didn't let it pollute his science, where Leibniz did it overtly. Leibniz publicly complained, that physics wasn't religious enough. If you were in a spaceship throwing the 2-liter bottle at 1 mile an hour, if you were in a spaceship throwing the 2-liter bottle at 1 mile an hour, will grant you the same thrust as shooting the dime 1,000 miles per hour. Just a fact that Newton understood. Well, I gotta rewrite that too. Sometimes my grammar's pretty bad. I mean, whatever you want to call that. My not realizing I forgot a word like the or something. Anyway. So I think that's enough of the argument. I think I've made the key points. Why drag it out? Blah, blah, blah. So if anybody does, like I said, if you got a Quora account and you don't really use it much, or you don't care, and you don't mind me sharing it, I would appreciate it. So just email me at ds.donotgo.com. ds at, yeah. So yeah, I'm still blocked. So the fact that this is taking, most of their notifications change fairly quickly. So I'm just having my doubts that they are at all interested in me hanging around. And that's what this is really about. Just getting rid of me. Okay, so anyway. Disappointing, like I said, because I think the question... There was the similar questions aren't anything like this question. That was the cool thing about it, right? There was no other question asked on Quora that actually is like this question. So if you go to these, related topics, none of them are similar. 1,000 tower quality, 20 miles an hour, how much kinetic? Well, that's just too stupid. Some of these questions are just so damn stupid. Like, well, you could just Google that, retard. Okay, if an object's mass m and m's mass 2 are dropped from the same height, so it's all gravity things, it's all some other thing, but none of them deal with this, where you can really isolate the question and say, how is it possible for me as a person to use 2 joules of energy to release some mass, and the mass leaves with 2,000 joules of energy? I only use 2 joules to launch it, and yet it has 2,000 joules when it hits the moon or something. So if I shoot my dime at the moon has an impact of 2,000 joules, and yet I only use 2 joules to shoot it. How is that possible? You've got to know, as a scientist, as a physicist, as a rational person, that can't really be possible. It makes no sense at all. That's free energy. And the universe don't do that. Okay. So, I've done my job. Yeah. And we'll see what happens. And such. Alright, so this has been a DraftScience. There it is, DraftScience video presentation. Thank you for your attention and such. Sorta.